or broken glass. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic, where a couple of old dudes play D&D and then talk about it, because we want you to have the best gaming experience you can. And since Wizards of the Coast seems to be on fire and is sinking into the muck, exactly, it's like, what's going on over there? But how are you, Andrew?
Pretty good, Shane. Just editing up a storm right now. Working on the World of Mirror book. And how are you?
I was actually going to say, you must feel more relaxed now that the Monsters of the Dungeon is out of the cage and is out in the world and people are buying it. But no, you're right back into the world of Mirror editing away. So you must be, your stress level is probably just maintained.
It's all good because it's just it's the final parts of the process. So
Excellent.
um, yeah.
Are you going to take a little time off once once the book is out the door?
Well, first I have to organize the adventure book plan.
All right.
I think I found a cartographer for us, which should be
Excellent.
which should help. Um, so, but I'll try to take another break. I just had a break like a month ago, so I'll try to take another one. Yeah, maybe in another month or so. We'll see.
Right on. Well, hey, people want to know that you're working hard in the background and you're making sure that the world of Mir is done and the adventures are started. So, taking a break, whatever. But this week we're talking about problem players. Is this correct? Problem players and DMs. Um, because right now there seems to be a lot of problems with D&D at the very top, which I alluded to earlier. Did you want to touch on that a little bit and just throw your hat into the fray?
First, I want to just quickly mention for the Kickstarter backers
Oh, sure.
that the dungeon book is arriving all over the world now. So it's arrived in the UK and Germany. It's on its way to Australia. And then all over the US, books are starting to arrive, and some Canadian books have arrived. Yeah, yours should be here probably in a week or so at the most, maybe sooner.
Excellent.
And yeah, so that's happening with the dungeon book. And then the Mirror book, as I mentioned, we're still in the process of editing, and we have some new art that we'll share on the Kickstarter page with our backers because Travis has done some new art for that upcoming book.
Excellent.
So, to our topic, yes, problem DMs and players. Now, this is actually the thing that I get asked the most about. I was so surprised when I started writing books about the game that this actually is a bigger part of the curiosity of DMs and players is how to deal with unhealthy groups, basically. So,
Right.
any kind of group, you need boundaries. It needs to be looked after, and you need good leadership. So, one really basic thing is to have good group rules of what your expectations are, what kind of game you want. Our group is very simple. There's basically two rules: respectful play, and we don't swear at our table. Oh yeah, and no tech. That, that's really that's really basically our rules. And you don't need a session zero to do it. It can actually be done really quickly. You don't have to waste a whole gaming session. You could do it before you even meet. And it doesn't really, yeah, it doesn't take a long time. Um, Regardless of your group rules, though, still things will come up and
Oh
you'll
yeah,
have to
totally.
deal with them. And this is an example of some of those things that can come up. And the first part we'll talk about our players. Now, there's sort of this belief out there. There's even books about it, and people who will give advice and say, "This is how you're a good player, and you should memorize what you have to do, and you shouldn't take too long, and you should know your character's abilities, and maybe role play or describe what you're doing in the scene. And I actually personally think none of that actually is necessary because this is a game. And the
Yeah.
players, they shouldn't have to do any prep. That's not how the game is set up. They should just show up with their character sheet, whether it's on a phone or or a real one on paper, and play and have fun. So I don't think you need to do all of this sort of prep and all that kind of stuff. If you want to, fine, and it does help things speed up a little bit if you know your character really well. But I think it's natural that people might look up a spell or might take some time to figure out what their character wants to do. So I think that's just part of the game. And if you have a good DM who moves things along, it's not really a big issue. Um, and the whole D&D thing is not about being perfect. It's not about winning. It's about
Yeah.
having fun. So I think that idea that a player has to be this perfect player is unnecessary. Um, and I think that the issues of problem players go well beyond that. Um, I even think that min maxers, power gamers, people who try to maximize their characters to be the best they can be, which is a new way of playing. Not too many people played like that when D&D began, but it's crept into the game. It comes from video games for sure.
Right.
I don't think that kind of play is a problem because the DM can do anything. So if you have a player you think you've maxed out to be as powerful as they can, well, then I'll give my Tarask wings.
Why not? There's no
Like
rules.
the DM can always, there's always a bigger fish, like Qui-Gon says in the Phantom Menace, and they're in the submarine going through the ocean, and there's massive Titan, underwater Titan tries to grab their submarine. But as it's fighting with the submarine, another one like 10 times the size grabs that Titan.
There's always a bigger fish.
So the DM can always up a player, a power gamer, always. They can always outdo them.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think it's an issue. I've had many players like that since I started playing D&D again with 5e, and I never find it an issue. Um, if I want to make the game hard and challenging, I can do it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
I mean, it's very much. I mean, I always think of D&D as like an improv thing, and I did a lot of improv theater over the years. And the whole basic rule for improv is you just whatever happens, you just say yeah, sure, no
yeah,
problem, let's do that.
always say yeah.
And exactly, and that's to me is what D&D really is ultimately, because you're at the table and you have a guy who's running the game or a gal who's running the game, and then you have a bunch of players, and you're there for the same reason, to have fun. You don't really. The only time I've ever had issues uh, in at the table is when you have people that don't do that, where they, like you're saying, the max players might be really obsessed with the numbers and stuff like that, where the DM might think their story is the best thing ever, uh, and they drop the whole collaborative storytelling and not being able to, I mean, that's when railroading issues happen and stuff like that. But there's a time and place for all of it, and ultimately, as we always say, it's just a game. So why would these things happen? Anyway, sorry, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, no, no, no. Um, yeah, exactly. So I've made four kinds of general players that I think are a problem, which
Excellent.
if you have good house rules, you can group rules, not game rules, but with your group, you can talk to people if these sort of types come up and you can sort it out because these are issues for sure. The first one, the most famous one, is the rules lawyer. So these people care more about the rules and being right than actually having fun with the game. They often argue with the DM. And my common comment, if this ever happens, is that there's only one DM.
Yes.
And it doesn't need to be any kind of drama. This is just how the game works. And there's a reason why most sports have one referee. or referees, is to try to make sure that things don't go off the rails. And so you don't interrupting the game. That's not how it works. Interrupting the game to figure out a rule. If you want to point out a rule, I think the best way is to do it politely out of the game. Um, and it's really I've never ever had an issue with this, like, because I just say at the table, there's only one DM. That's all I say.
You
And
actually say that quite like not a lot, but it is funny that every once in a while when you do say that, it just makes me laugh because it's like it means that there's so much going on at the table where people are digging in and doing, I don't know, obsessive about something in particular, and you're
yeah,
like, guys, come on, there's only one DM here, let's just keep playing because we don't let's not get bogged down in this detail, that kind of thing.
yeah, and I think actually again the rules aren't the most important thing. I think in general you want to stick to it because that's a consistent understanding and framework for all the players, so everybody knows what you're
Exactly.
doing. But the issue is when it stops the game and when it slows the game down, and that's
Yep.
not fun. And that's D&D is fun when things are moving. So if people are stopped because they're trying to figure out a rule, usually if I don't know the rule, um, or if maybe I've made a mistake, I'll usually just side with the PC and then I'll look it up later. And I don't mind if somebody stops really quickly and goes, once in a while, like if they stop really quickly and go, oh, they point something out really quick. But if
Yeah.
there's any kind of big pause or discussion, then I say there's one DM, let's keep moving. But I usually side with the player. I usually do, and I say I'll look it up later. Um, Another version of the rules lawyer is somebody who keeps telling the other players what to do. So there's a balance with this because
Right.
helping people, if they want the help and if it's not intrusive, is great. But if you're doing it all the time, that again is stopping the game. You're interrupting the flow. It's not your turn. It's a turn-based game, so that moves
Yep.
smoothly. So I would say that's the general sort of definition of a rules lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, when we're playing, I mean, there's moments here and there where somebody goes, "Oh crap, I forgot to roll this," and then you'll be like, "Oh, okay, hang on," and you'll pause, and like somebody rolls it. You're like, "Okay, great. Does it impact anything? Not really. All right, fine. Keep going." And it's just the flow that we've been able to get into, uh, is just this thing, and if somebody waits too long or remembers something too long, you'll actually go, no, let's just keep going. Let's
Yeah,
just keep moving because we'll work that out later. And it's not a big deal. Like it's like a player forgets something, the DM might forget something. It's like it's not a huge thing because if and the other thing too is like if there's an impact, like if a character dies, if a player dies, and then they go, well, wait, I had the thing,
yeah,
I've seen you do this. You're like, oh, really? Okay, well, let's back up then. Okay,
yeah,
let's do that again. And then if the player still dies, the player still dies. But sometimes, your DMs should always have that sort of flexibility within reason, right? And I keep coming back to like unreasonable tables. Anyway,
yeah. Yeah, I
please.
think, in general, again, the most important thing is the flow. Um, but sometimes there's time to, make little adjustments. But in general, it's about keeping things going. I think that's one of the best things a DM can do. And if
Yeah.
there's a mistake or somebody forgets something, usually we just keep going. Um, again, the game is not, we're supposed to be doing it for fun. So it's not, you don't have to, everything doesn't have to be perfect. Um,
Yeah.
Another example of a problem player is a hothead. So these are people with anger management issues. Um, they're usually not following the group rules. They might be disruptive to the group, even aggressive towards people at the table. We only had this once in I think we're around 9 years now we've been playing. We had it once, and I went and talked to the person, and they they basically stopped doing it. I told them they're like, they'd gone over the line, and we didn't invite them back. Um, So for sure, I think one of the basics for our basic rule about being respectful, if you're rude and you're hostile, that's not being respectful. So
Yeah, exactly.
um, the next one is the goofball. And people who've read our books or know me somewhat, they might wonder, seriously, you have a problem with goofballs? Um, but there is silly can be fun, but there is a limit. The most famous example was in our group. The party were fighting giants. They were fairly high level, and there were some giants were outside this cave and some were inside. And the party had just started to engage them, and the fight was on. And this new player, for his turn, he said, "I will clean my sword." That was his action for his turn. And people at the table kind of looked at him and looked at me like, what's going on? Then his second turn, he said he would change his clothes. He would change his outfit with his action. And this time, people looked at me again, like with stunned disbelief. And I looked at him with stunned disbelief. And we never invited that player back again.
Oh man, that is hilarious. I've,
Yeah.
I've I've heard that before, but oh my god, it never gets old. Never gets old.
The last kind of problem player is the slacker. So we are having fun here, for sure. But people who just consistently don't show up for games, who are consistently late, who consistently aren't paying attention, yeah, it's not going to work out. Um, it's just
Yeah,
a
because it just gives you that feeling that they don't really want to be there. They're like, oh, I'm here because I want to play a game, but I'd
yeah.
rather
Like if you
go
don't want to do
watch a
it, you don't want to
movie.
do it. Fine, it's not a big deal. But so yeah, you got it. There's got to be some kind of commitment to the group.
Yeah.
People will miss sessions, but not all the time.
Yeah, life happens. You miss a session here or there, and that's I think always totally fine because that's part of the game. People can't always be there,
Yeah,
but definitely, if they don't show up, a couple times in a row, then you're kind of like, well, all right, okay. The third time is kind of where I would be like, dude, are you gonna come back? Like,
yeah,
is there
yeah,
some other time of the week that'll be better?
yeah,
Like, I don't know if.
yeah, yeah. I'd be the same. I'd say even a couple times in a row wouldn't be a big deal, but 3 or 4 times, then I'd talk to them and say, "Do you want to do this?" Like, because we really like having you at the table. But um, all
But
right,
your character has been on vacation for
yeah,
like three
that I
sessions,
don't
and
mind. That I actually enjoy the creative aspect of trying to figure out why this player isn't here, which we've talked about before.
yeah,
Um, all right, DMs. Now, I think, again, I think being a player is quite easy, and I don't think there's that. I think it's easy to deal with a problem player, and
right.
it's straightforward. DM's more complicated because they're the one who's supposed to be running the game. So if you have a problem DM, you're probably going to have to start a new game with a new group. Um, so problem DMs, how many kinds do I have here? Three? Yeah. So I don't mean now another issue with DMing is sandbox versus railroad. So sandbox games are ones where the players can do whatever they want. They can go anywhere. Um, railroad is much more linear storytelling. The DM's got a really clear idea of what he wants to happen or she wants to happen. And this is not what I'm talking about. Those are just different styles. Neither one of them is
Right.
correct. Um, our table is always sandbox, but there's no issues with being a railroad DM if your group likes that. Um,
True. And sometimes it's actually necessary. There's like a um somebody's, they want to push ahead and there's a thing that needs to happen that's time sensitive, and then the DM can like put up the guardrails and say, okay, if you guys don't get there by tomorrow or 3 days hence or whatever, um, you kind of encourage them not to wander or not to oh, I'm going to go that way. No, you're not going to go that way because every right now you got to be in you already promised you're going to go to that place to save that thing or get that
right.
reward or whatever. So, but very rarely I would think, there's just it's again time and place, right? At least that's how I
Yeah,
feel
I
about
think
it.
as a sandbox DM, you can still do a lot of that. To me, a railroad is, a really, really linear story where, it's people have got to follow this one path in the story.
Yeah.
Where sandbox, you can choose many different things, many different paths, but you can, again, because you're the DM, you can still set up situations that you want to happen. Um, because you can do anything. You can change you can change anything in the game, right? So, um, but it's two different styles. So I don't think that has to do with being a problem at all. But I
No,
do
I would
have
agree.
three examples of problems.
Let's hear it.
All right. The most common, I think, is the egomaniac. So
Yeah.
yeah, DMs who don't understand the game's not about them. Um, for me, it's actually the opposite. It's totally about the players. Um, I present the scenes, the story, and then I watch what the players are going to do. And aside from no evil PCs in our campaign, our players can do anything. Um, Many times I just sit back when I'm DMing and I just watch and listen.
Yeah.
Many times. Um, the signs of the egomaniac DM. They almost always talk most of the game. They usually have a large vocabulary to describe everything. They have these long, eloquent sentences. And here's one example, just something I quickly wrote up. But they'll say something like, you enter the room, dust falls off the old wooden door as you enter. Then silence greets you like a long lost friend of many years. You see a badly crafted double bed. The bed sheets are hanging off the bed, casting a shadow across the stone floor. Then your eyes notice a strongly reinforced chest. The copper lock sparkles in the dim light and invites you forward.
I am so happy I've never run into that as a player. God, that would just be the worst.
So some of that, some of like pieces of that, that's DMing. But doing that all the time,
God.
that's not DMing. That's posing. There are certain dungeon masters who do this, but what you're doing is you're taking up so much of the time that the spotlight is now on you. You're the star of the show, where the game is supposed to be about the players making choices, right?
I'm just thinking about all of the times where I've read the descriptions in in adventures, and they're always, I would say, probably 99% of the time, they're pretty short.
Yeah.
The room is dark. There, you can see that there's something in the room. Done. Like, there's no long description. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time, part of it is that people forget the players are there, and it's part their imagination is involved as well. So you don't actually have to go overboard with your descriptions. Um, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the players are taking part of it. So pardon. So whatever you're taking part in it. So whatever you're describing, then the player takes that in, and they have their own imagination that they're using to experience the game. So you don't have to give every detail and all of this fluff, most of it. The players are using their own imagination. They're there too, and their imagination is part of it. It's
Yeah.
not just
Stephen
about
King.
yeah,
Well, yeah. Stephen King has actually written about that, not about DMing, but about writing in general. Uh, where he's very specific. He's like, there are times where I've written a passage that, I'm like describing everything, where then I'm going through the editing process and I'm like, dude, the sun's coming through the window. That's all you need. They'll figure it out. Their brain will fill in the detail. You don't need to
exactly,
give them everything.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You don't have to lead people all the time. And a lot of really bright people play D&D, and a lot of really creative people, right? Um, the other thing is in these kind of games, their monsters and NPCs usually seem to be invincible. This kind of dungeon master. Um, and the fourth sign of these kind of dungeon masters is that they're not good listeners.
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
think is probably the number one skill. I think that helps, not just in DMing, but probably in relationships, is listening.
Yeah. I would agree.
I'd say, I'd say when I was a teacher, for sure, that's number one.
Especially with young kids, like that is like a listening game all the time.
Yeah. All right. We have two more kinds of problem DMs.
All right.
The second one is the slacker. So just like you have player slackers, which can be a problem, the DM slackers aren't prepared. They don't know the basic rules. They don't know the story. They're always looking things up and pausing and stopping the game to figure out what's going on. Now, if you're a new DM, of course, your players need to be more patient and this will happen more. But an experienced DM, you need to be prepared. You'd have to do homework for the game. Um, a certain amount, at least in terms of the rules. You might improv the whole session as far as the story, but you still need to know the rules or most of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say that this sort of dungeon master is an issue. It really slows the game down. It's not as fun.
Agreed.
The last kind is the bully. So, DMs who think the game is a fight against the PCs. And they are usually egomaniacs as well. Personally, when I'm DMing, I actually cheer for the players. You don't have to. Some people don't. Some people try to be as neutral as possible. But I'm definitely cheering for the players. In fact, the reason why I made all these monster books and these creatures is to see them defeated. I want to see them defeated.
Hashtag monster defeat.
Yes, exactly.
Well, also, especially since you've created, I mean, I'll always go back to that evil monster, the one that comes out in the rain and is basically invisible. I hate that thing with a passion. And when we defeated that thing for the first time you ran it, I remember you going, "Yeah, right on. That was cool."
Exactly.
Because you have to come up so creatively of how to like defeat these creatures because when they're played properly by the DM, they are living, breathing, thinking things that if they're not just there to be a bullet sponge. They're there to be something that is, I'm going to be here and I'm going to defend my territory. I've got this thing I want to do, but you guys came along and you're in my way and or you're disturbing my, home or whatever. But, when they're played that way, that's where the DM can cheer. Be like, yeah, you came into this creature's home. It doesn't want you there. And, it happens to be evil. So,
Mhm.
that's the way to go, I think, all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why there's so many teachers who are dungeon masters. I think there's a lot of parallels, right? And so when you're a teacher, you're cheering for your students. You want them to succeed, kind of defeat these obstacles, and you're running this group and you're providing some leadership and you're looking after the group so it maintains, you might have to check in with the players in between sessions and um, so I think yeah, many similarities and just as teachers cheer for their students, I think you can be a DM who cheers for your players. You don't have to. You can remain neutral. But if you're antagonistic, I think that's a problem. It doesn't. That's not what the game is about because the DM can do anything. So if they want to bully your characters around, they can. And there are some groups like that. But yeah, I don't think that game is as fun.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Because, I've told you this before of, there was one DM that I just did not get along with because they had no interest in doing the collective storytelling. It was all about their story, which was boring and was incredibly repetitive. And that's no fun because when
Right.
you're dying repeatedly, when you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing because the DM is, only feeding you the information they want you to know, And when you ask and they give you no answer, that to me is kind of a bullying tactic where they just want you to satisfy their ego.
Yeah,
And
for
also
sure.
get free bottles of wine every session. So that was another thing too. Actually, I'm going to add a fourth one, a fourth bad DM.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
DM where they require you to bring a bottle of wine and then they proceed to drink until the end of the game session and they're drunk off their brain at the end. Bad drunk DMs.
Bad drunk DM, yeah. Yeah, you mentioned a really good point. Is that something that really helps the game is taking the players' backstories and putting that into the story, into the
Yeah.
campaign. The more you can do that, the more invested your players are going to be. And people don't have to give you 3 or 4 pages of backstory. It can be
Yeah.
quite it can be quite straightforward. But all of that, like that player you had who had this relationship with her parents, um, that was really fun. It really added to the story, um, and it wasn't really complicated. Didn't have a lot of layers to it, but it had enough to make things interesting. So anytime you can do that, um, like you said, that's one of the ways that the storytelling can be collaborative. Um,
Well, yeah, like just a couple weeks ago when our last session, um, I remembered we were in a situation. We arrived at a town. I was looking at my sheet, going, right. I've got this character is supposed to be doing this thing. They have a mission that they need to accomplish that the party
right,
doesn't know about. And one of the features was criminal contact. And I just brought it up. I
right.
said, hey, and I saw the look on your face. You're like, oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, well, that's such a great example. That's exactly right. That's when you have this collaborative process because I have my NPCs for the story. And as soon as you said that you had a criminal contact, I went, "Oh, I know the perfect character.
exactly.
It fits in
And
perfectly with this NPC, so now that will add a whole other dimension to the story." Yeah,
And the
exactly.
best part was that it happened like that. It was organic, just because I looked, I mentioned it. You were like, oh yeah, right on, and you were able to fill the situation out, and then that gets put into your back pocket of like, okay, that could be part of the story at some point maybe. So
Yeah.
I just love that stuff, and the more that happens, because we have players at our table that are there's ones that are very they play their character. They have, okay, my character needs this. They're always going to do this thing if this
Mhm.
situation arises, and that kind of stuff is brilliant because you if you walk into a room and the expectation is, oh, we're here to do this one activity or whatever it might be, but a player says, I'm sorry, my character sees that thing or wants to do this thing and requires that they do it, all hell can break loose. And it gives the players like a time to go, oh my God, what are we going to do? And then you're like, ha ha ha, I've got 5 characters that could burst through the door right now and really, get your story going in a different way or something. And again, it's that is the stuff that I love at the table, because I mean, it's probably because of the whole improv connection, but it is still, it keeps stories fresh without really requiring a lot of effort, because like the example, hey, this, you were like, yep, right on, do bump, do a little bit of story got added, and can actually flesh out stuff later on for that character, for the party, or not. I mean, it's not a requirement. It's just an
Yeah.
opportunity that can be run with, and like characters that I've had in the past where um, the parents became involved and had joined the party as NPCs, and I think we've had a few players that have had like, oh well, if we go to that town, my family owns a chain of this, that, and the other thing. And I think one situation we were trying to get transport, and it's like, oh wait, your uncle has this particular chain, and they've actually got some stuff in the back in the backyard that you can use to travel to wherever you need to go. And it just kind of, and it makes players feel way more involved, and
Yeah.
and the DMs get all that creative juice flowing. So anyway,
Yeah.
I just love that stuff. And by the way,
Um,
for the record, he is not a bad DM. He is a very good DM. That's why we get to do podcasts, and that's why we get to do, get involved with helping books get made. I'm sure that a lot of the play testing we've done. over the years has actually been able to inform better creatures in Monsters of the Dungeon, or a better adventure that you have cooking right now, or that kind of stuff. So I mean, that's the
100%.
brilliant part of it.
Yeah, exactly. You're always learning. And I would say that probably of those kinds of DMs, probably the one that I might venture into the territory is the egomaniac DM. But I'm aware that I'm talking too much is going to be me taking the spotlight, but DMs sometimes do that. So it's just something you have to be aware of. So we always have things to learn for sure.
Well, exactly, and stuff doesn't always work. Like that's okay. Like if a player wants a particular thing to happen, or the DM wants a particular thing to happen, and it doesn't, that is something you can use at the next session or the next adventure. Like there's all these things. There's no reason to have players or DMs being out of joint because something just doesn't work, because that's part of it. Like
Yeah,
you could come up with a great idea and then in practice you realize it needs to be modified.
yeah,
And the only way you find that out is if it's like, okay, hey guys, blah 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 blah. Oh, you walk into the room and you try the thing, and then players are like, what? Or they're like, they died, or the creature wasn't
right.
as powerful as it could have been. And I mean, yeah, it all comes back to the flexibility at the table and trying to avoid basically everything that you've just described today is for the players and for the DMs. And yeah, I mean, it's human nature, sadly, at times, and you're never going to get along with everybody at your table. I have been blessed and very
Yeah,
lucky. Uh, it was many years ago now. Somebody invited me to say, "Hey, you want to come play some D&D?" And I'm like, "God, I haven't done that in years." Yeah, totally. And I lucked out. I totally did. And
right.
that's not blowing smoke. That's reality, because I've played games where you're like, damn, there's D&D today. And if you say that, you're like, you're just tired, and you
Yeah,
just say, hey, look, I can't make it today. Or if you do that consistently, you're like, why are you even going? Find a
yeah,
different group. Find a
yeah,
different one. There's tons
exactly.
out there. Or
Yeah,
start one. That's the other option too.
yeah, yeah, 100%.
So we've covered bad DMs. We've covered bad players, or sorry, not bad, problem players. Um, any final words before we wrap it up today?
Well, again, that it's going to take work. You can't just arrange for some people to meet together and then expect that it's just going to stay the same. The
Yeah.
group is like it's a living creature and you have to look after it, and you might have to change things. Like our group right now, a long-term player who's been with us for the whole 9 years has left, but a new player has joined, and we actually have adjusted things so that that new player can now come every 2 weeks. So
Yeah, which is great. And I
yeah,
like the fact that we were able to be that flexible. And I noticed in the Discord, in the other group, you actually said, "Hey guys, our schedule has changed. I know it's harder for this group to get together, but we've actually got some flexibility that we didn't have 2 weeks ago." So
right.
yeah, I think that's really great. Those kinds of things are just, I love them. So at the end of the day, it's just a game, people. It's just a game, and we're very critical of those who want it to be, I don't know, regimented or something, and that's just weird to me, because I've had sessions where you show up and you guys and the players and the DM just talk about life and don't actually really get around to playing, and that is awesome. I've done that a few times over the years, because sometimes you just want to catch up with people. Oh, what's going on in your life? What's oh yeah, well, we could bring that into the story, or whatever. So but yeah, but boiling it all down, it's just a game, and if you're not having fun, then go, I don't know, pick up stamp collecting or something. Because to me, that strikes as being, I don't know, less exciting. But anyway, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for listening on the audio edition of our podcast. And if you have any questions or have anything you'd like to know, Most of that stuff will be down in the description below, links and all of that. And of course, come talk to us. Talk to us here and there because we are available and maybe come on the show and tell us what your gaming experience is like. You never know. We could be we could be flexible and just run with it, kind of like being in a tail. But anyway, thank you all for watching, listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Later.